Hi everyone, it's Mirela Ciobanu, lead editor with the papers, and we are live at EIC 2026, where I'm about to speak with Dean Saxe, principal security engineer at Remitly, and we are going to talk about solving digital identity fraud. Dean, happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Mirela. It's very nice to be here today.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we have this conversation face to face, because the first time we met was some time ago online when we talked about what happens to our data after we die.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and you released a white paper around it.
Yeah, on I believe it was March 3rd of this year, through the OpenID Foundation Death in the Digital Estate Community Group, we released both a white paper and a planning guide. And so the white paper covers the intersection of technology, law, culture, and religion on death, and examines sort of a worldwide view of how we handle death in the world and how we actually don't handle the death when it comes to our digital assets, our digital estate. We also released a planning guide, and that planning guide was all about how do you plan for your eventual death? How do you plan for your digital estate? What are the assets you need to collect? How do you store them securely? How do you share them with people securely? So that mere mortal humans can actually deal with this significant problem. And it turns out it's actually quite difficult to deal with death and dying and your digital assets. And even myself, and I'll speak about this today at a keynote, I've had a break glass kit for myself for a long time. In case of emergency, I can go and regain access to all of my digital credentials. And I figured I'd put it together for not only myself, but for my wife and my kids if I was to pass away. And it actually didn't work when I needed it to work because it was broken, because I made a mistake. And so I've been working on fixing some of those mistakes and figuring out how to make it better. But it is a fundamentally difficult problem for all of us, even those of us who are supposed experts in this field.
Yeah, that sounds more of a sensitive a problem to deal with. But as you mentioned, we have to deal with it. And how was it received by the whole community, the industry, people, stakeholders?
Yeah, I think it was quite well received. I think the feedback that we got from the industry, and certainly we saw a lot of pieces in the press. I think at last count, there were a couple of dozen pieces that came out in the press about our work. My disappointment is that we haven't seen uptake from the industry. So one of the problems we're facing right now is we are a community group at the OpenID Foundation. We can't create protocols. All we can do is we can create documentation, we can examine the space, we can talk about it, and we would like to move to that next step of creating protocols. But in order to do so, it feels like we are right now pushing rope at the industry, saying, you need to do something with this, and here, take this and do something with it. But we aren't necessarily seeing people on the other side pulling that same rope and saying, yes, we need this, and we need you to help us deliver protocols, etc. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been having a lot of conversations through the OpenID Foundation that are maybe starting to bear some fruit. I'm not ready to talk about them yet, but have some ideas as to how we can engage with various stakeholders who can help us with both engaging with politicians at a state and national level, certainly in the US, perhaps internationally, as well as hearing about some insurance companies that find this to be a real challenge and a huge cost to their companies. And so there's a possible opportunity there to work with maybe some insurance companies on this problem. I would love to hear from the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, the very large online platforms, as Eve Mailer calls them, or VLOPs, I believe is the term she uses. I would love to hear from more of them as to how we can work together to solve this problem. But we'll take partners in any shape and size that we can find them to help move the ball forward on this work.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, more details are going to come up this afternoon when you are going to have the presentation.
Correct.
Yeah, but now I'm thinking about my financial audience that was saying, oh, but in the beginning it was solving digital identity fraud and connection with financial services. Returning up maybe a bit also to your position at Remitly and thinking about financial institutions. We all know that digital identity fraud has surged in the recent years. What types of fraud in this domain are you seeing, and where do they typically originate?
Do you mean specifically at Remitly, or do you mean...
you can talk about the cross-border aspect of payments and also in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
I probably can't talk specifically about Remitly, but what I can talk about is we do see, particularly around this death and digital estate, there is a lot of fraud that happens. And we talk about this in the white paper, and some of it is familial. I believe one of the examples came from the UK, where pensioners who are taking a pension from the state in their old age may have moved overseas at some point. And they may pass away, and their families don't notify the state and keep collecting the pension from the UK. And so that's one form of familial or familiar fraud. The ones that we talk about specifically in the paper and in the planning guide, though, are regarding protecting your own estate from fraud. So if I want to, say, share my password manager, 1Password or Dashlane or whatever it might be, with somebody who might manage my estate after I pass away, there's a risk that that person, though they are a trusted individual, could take the information in that password manager, use it to log into my bank, use it to log into my investment firm, and pay themselves or basically steal that money. And so there's lots of opportunities for fraud there in that space around death and dying and trying to do the right thing, trying to share data appropriately. But again, it's a very difficult thing to do because we haven't built the tools to allow us to enable that sharing on death or on some state change in capacity. For instance, to say that you are only able to access these credentials after we have a validated death certificate or after we have some notification of incapacity. And that in turn creates these gaps, which of course fraudsters are going to try and exploit.
Yeah. And what can we do to avoid fraudster exploit these gaps?
So I think there's a number of different things that we'll have to do. And first, from the planning side, as we think about planning, we have to think about who and how do we share our data with. So for instance, in the United States, where I'm from, I have a lawyer who wrote my will, and I can share certain information in confidence with my lawyer. And so I might, for instance, give passwords or other credentials to that lawyer. Passwords maybe not the most durable thing, certainly doesn't take care of the multi-factor authentication problem, but maybe I give my lawyer a YubiKey, which has a credential to unlock the vault, my 1Password vault that has everything else. And because this is a trusted, hopefully very well trusted individual, I can trust that nobody will access that vault until the time is right to do so. If we're dealing with friends and family, we love to think that our friends and family are going to be forthright and honest all the time, but the reality is that we know that's not the case. So we have to think about mechanisms that only release data at that right time. And I think this is where the industry hasn't yet quite come to a set of conclusions or protocols to do that. And so you hear about things from, say, the EKYC working group, and actually with Agentic AI, you're hearing about this a lot right now, about doing things on behalf of someone else, delegation. But this is delegation at a distance. It's delegation not right now, as we see commonly, where I delegate access to a service to somebody, but it's delegation after a trigger event happens. And we haven't built the tools for that yet. Though I do think they are starting to come about now, particularly from the EKYC working group, where guardianship, for instance, I'm a guardian for my minor child. When he reaches the age of maturity at 18, I will no longer be his guardian. So that's that trigger event. And if we can build that for guardianship use cases, we can certainly build it for these kinds of use cases as well.
But regarding use cases, so far probably we don't have anything around.
Not yet. No, we have. I think we have use cases, but we don't have tools.
Yeah.
And so the use cases are clear.
I mean, not necessarily use cases, but projects that are developing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because we don't yet have quite the demand that we would like to have. We do see it in some places. I think if you speak to Mickey Brotzler, she's with National Bank of Australia, I believe, or National Australia Bank. She has shared that there's some work happening in Australia now, as have some other colleagues through Death and Digital Estate down in Australia. So there are some regions that are beginning to really see a demand for change to support these kinds of use cases and also drive down fraud. But it's not broadly distributed around the world yet at this point.
Yeah, and if we are to compare how how were people used to dealing with this type of situation? Because you mentioned that this study also involves a cultural aspect, involves a philosophical, implications.
Yeah. So from a cultural perspective, death is going to vary depending on your culture, on your religion, on the intersection of both of those. And I'm not a religious person, so I can't speak to the religious aspect of it. But I can say that, in examining countries where religions that believe in, say, reincarnation are the majority, how people in those cultures and those religions think about death and dying is very different than how I think about it. So one of the biggest challenges that we have in all of this space is your culture, your religion, your laws will all dictate how your estate is managed, and that in turn will impact how fraud may occur in those countries. So if you are in a sort of a collectivist society where family is quite important, and family deals with your estate and deals with everything on your behalf, you're going to have a very different set of potential fraud vectors than in some place where it is really dependent upon the individual to decide exactly what they want to happen. So I was speaking to a colleague from Denmark who was explaining that the laws in Denmark prescribe that on death, if you have children, you cannot remove them from your will in any which way. That is not the law in the United States. And so all of these will impact the various financial services and how they operate, and the various fraud pathways that may show up in their individual regions.
So this in a way makes it a lot difficult to develop these standards.
It does.
Because the approach and the vision on the topic is different.
That's right. And so we have to take a global approach to make things really flexible and not focus on the way things work in our specific region or our culture or our religion, but look more broadly at how we can create sort of open-ended protocols that allow a lot of flexibility. And this is going to be, I think, one of the real challenges. And again, why we need lots of people from around the world, from different companies, from different cultures, from different religions to contribute to this work so that we don't fall into the trap of our own blind spots. I'm not familiar with all of the worldwide religions or cultures. It's not what I have studied. It's not what I have done in my life. It's not an excuse, but it does create blind spots. And in order to drive those blind spots down, we have to invite people worldwide to come and join us in this journey.
Yeah. And probably when this discussion started, there wasn't that much talk about this AI and AI agents.
That's right.
Is it also possible to insert this concept of AI agent that kind of transact in your behalf?
That's a very good question, because one of the things that we just spoke about was about the changing conditions. So we talked about guardianship. Well, the changing conditions also affect your AI agents. And so if I have an AI agent that's doing transactions on my behalf and I pass away, who shuts down the agent?
Exactly.
Right. So Carl McGinnis, I believe he was former chief architect at Okta, has written a lot about this concept recently. And the term he uses is a mandate. So the agent has a mandate to take an action as long as some certain conditions are true. And so if that mandate includes the condition of Dean is still alive, or Dean is alive and has not lost any mental capacity, then the agent can continue working. But if that condition is not true, the agent has to stop. And so these are the conversations we're all having right now. But all of this is very idealistic, and it hasn't yet come to fruition with protocols and tools that help us solve for these problems. And that's why we're all here in Germany this week.
Exactly. I was about to ask, because you mentioned that we need different people to contribute with different backgrounds, different views, and returning to EIC. How has been the conference so far? What are some topics that made you more aware? Oh, I need to pay more attention. Or what are some things that are missing that need to be more discussed?
I think the conference has been great so far. What I'll say is There's a lot of talk about AI. Everyone is talking about AI. Everyone has a slightly different way of trying to solve the problem. They're all sort of in a general direction as to how do we deal with identity and AI. But it is still a very much unsolved kind of a problem. One of my takeaways from this week is that whatever I do for AI today, I'm probably going to have to do something different in 6 months. And 6 months after that, I may have to do something yet different still. We're still in the very early days, and things are changing very rapidly. So it's an interesting space, and keep watching. We'll see what happens. The other thing I thought that was fantastic this week was Elizabeth Garber. She gave a great keynote talk on, I believe it was Tuesday afternoon, where she talked about how we in the identity community are building these tools that are useful tools for our digital lives and all the places that we interact online and in person, but they're also tools that can be abused. And so we have to think about the dual use of the tools that we create and how they might be abused by our governments, et cetera, and used in ultimately against us as individuals. And so that was a really enlightening and thoughtful talk. And I was really happy to see Elizabeth give that here, because I think it brought to light some of the challenges that we all face in this industry about thinking clearly about the impact of the choices we make and the tools that we develop, because it can have negative consequences on us, on our friends, on our family, on our society.
Yeah, this is one thing that I like here, that it might start with standards and compliance and risk management, but that it ends up with real use cases and the impact it has, on human daily life.
That's right. And so Elizabeth really brought humanism and thinking about people to the forefront, which, though we talk about identity, and we do talk a lot about human identity and non-human identity, but in this case, I think bringing that humanist value back in and thinking about what we're doing and who we're serving is really important. So for me, myself, I often think about this in terms of I do this work to bring security and protection to others, whether it's the company that I work for, the customers of the company that I work for, my own family, myself. But it's really important to anchor this in principles, and I won't say necessarily moral principles, but principles of not harming someone else or trying to do things that avoid any harms to others.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dean, for today's discussion, and I look forward to continuing, and next time, to see how we have evolved from standards and technical topics to more human-centered identity topics, though there is lots of progress here.
We will continue to make progress. It will be it will take some time, but we will make progress, and we will get a little bit better each and every day. And as long as we're making continuous progress, I think eventually we'll solve many of these problems. New problems will come up. That's okay. We'll then solve those. But one step at a time, and hopefully make things better for individuals every single day that we do this work.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was nice meeting you.